Hey everyone, welcome to The Conversation. This podcast is a production of Capital Community Church, and we are located in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So as we say each month, if you're in the area, we would love the chance to connect with you. So consider this your invitation. Come join us on campus for one of our weekly services, and we would be honored to have the chance to meet you. For more information, you can check out capitalcommunity.ca. Today on The Conversation, we have a great friend to CCC named Ricardo Hatfield joining us. Ricardo and his wife Alisha are very involved in the Everybody Growing Church in Stittsville, Ontario. Ricardo has served in various capacities there over the years, but currently he serves as the worship leader. He is a talented musician and a phenomenal singer, and if you've ever heard him sing, that's not news to you. You already know that. During the conversation, we talked about many different things, including the importance of excellence in ministry, some of Ricardo's experiences touring with James Wilson, and he also shares a powerful personal testimony. I know that you're going to be blessed, and you're going to be encouraged by today's episode. So, thanks once again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Well, everybody, welcome today to the podcast episode. We're kind of just dipping our toe in the water, as it were. As you can see, we've got a pseudo setup, but we're christening it today and breaking it in with my friend, Ricardo Hatfield from Ottawa, Ontario, more specifically Stittsville, Ontario. And you're very involved there at the church in Stittsville, you and your wife, Alisha. Your pastor is Dwayne and Leanna McCarty. And they are transplants from New Brunswick, I will say. Yes. So a little bit of a little connection there. But why don't you go ahead and greet everybody, Ricardo? Thank you for taking the time today to join me for this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. As you've heard, my name is Ricardo Hatfield. I am the music director of the Everybody Growing Church in Ottawa, Ontario. I also lead worship for the Ontario district for any type of youth events, so Hyphen Retreat, Youth Camp, Winter Youth Crusade, and the May Youth Convention. I love all things worship music. I love all things music. So it's right up in my alley to do anything such as what I'm doing this weekend here for the New Brunswick district. So I'm excited.
Yes, sir. And I was just about to say that you're here joining Capital Community Church, our youth weekend.
Yeah.
And you're going to be leading worship for us. So you just arrived this morning.
Yes, sir.
And after this, you're probably going to catch up from the early morning, maybe take a little bit of a rest. But again, thank you for taking the time
Absolutely.
For the convo. So I guess, I gave a few minor details. You're married, of course. I mentioned your wife and where you are involved in your local church. Mm-hmm. Tell us, I guess, how you got, the details escape me. I know we've talked about this before, but just kind of how you got involved in the church as you are now. You can go as far back as you want, but just kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself. Give us some pertinent details.
Okay. So I got involved in the music ministry, the music department, from when I believe I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, is when I started playing the drums. Actually, drumming was my first instrument, so I remember playing that, and then I moved over to playing piano for the altar services on our Sunday nights, and I loved doing that. And then I started singing from the piano. I would say that was probably around the age of 12 or 13.
Wow.
And at that point, it started picking up from there. I really just played locally. I led worship locally, served in my local church for years. And then there came a point, I know we were going to discuss my adoption portion, but there came a point where I was sitting in that in the sanctuary after a Sunday morning service, and I remember asking myself what the purpose was for my life. Mm-hmm. What God's plan was for me. Was I just supposed to play the piano and lead worship here, or I just needed clarification and guidance, really, and to accept God for myself and have a personal walk with Him. So I feel like at that point, once I came to that realization, is when my area of ministry kind of became clearer and picked up. So yeah, there was. Do you want me to talk about my adoption?
We'll probably get there. I was going to say, one thing. So we met first in 2014. You were involved in the youth team.
Absolutely.
There in Stittsville, and for some reason you felt it a good idea to invite me out to speak at an event. Just teasing, but
bro.
I remember being there, and that was the first time I was ever exposed to your musical gifting. I think you were on the keys and singing and leading.
Yep.
And honestly, when I heard you that time, and people here could attest, I came home saying, man, we got to get Ricardo at some point. Now, you did come 4 years later. We had the opportunity to bring you in for this same event.
Yeah.
Now you're here 4 years later again. So
Dimensions.
That was the theme.
The theme was.
The theme of Youth Explosion was Dimension that year. This year it's Remnant. So every 4 years, it's kind of like, the Olympic cycle. Maybe in 2026, we'll have you here again. I don't know. But, one thing that I appreciate about you kind of watching from a distance, we're both in Canada, but contrary to what some people might think, Canada's very big, so we don't rub shoulders all the time. But watching from a distance and the times I've been up close, it's obvious that you've been willing to serve in whatever capacity.
Yeah.
Even though it may not have been your primary passion or even what you felt God was leading you to, you still were very willing and open. And I think that's the kind of mentality that, people that want to be involved in kingdom work, sometimes you have to be willing to do something that maybe isn't your primary passion or focus, but for you, that ultimately led and opened the door to doing what you do now, which is, I would say, your primary passion. So I appreciate that you're not like, oh, no, I'm a music guy, but you're willing to lean in wherever there's need. And I think that's been your heart and your mentality, you and your wife.
It needs to be.
Yeah.
It needs to be. The rallying cry of every single person, regardless of what they're doing in the kingdom of God, is to serve. So whether it's serving your entire congregation through worship, or whether it's serving your pastor, or whether it's serving the person down the street from the church who has no clue who God is.
Right.
The reality is we're all called to make disciples, and to serve. It's so yeah. I think once you adopt the thought of it doesn't matter what I'm doing, as long as what I'm doing is helping to advance the kingdom, then if that means that I gotta vacuum the carpet on Monday and Tuesday, then it sets the platform, or it makes the sanctuary ready for a Wednesday and midweek service, then that's the area of ministry that you need to do.
Yeah, I think sometimes maybe we forget or we get away from the definition of to be a minister.
Yeah.
I mean, you break down that word in Greek or whatever language you want. It's to serve.
Yeah.
To be a minister is to be a servant. It's not to be, it's somebody that serves from a place of humility and whatever anybody else needs. That's true ministry. It's not always the platforms, but if we start in that place, like I'll serve wherever, I'll do whatever.
Yeah.
The last always end up being first, and God can take the least and make them the greatest.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that about you, and your gift certainly speaks for itself. You're extremely talented, and we certainly, I'm so thankful that you use it for God's kingdom. We'll probably come back around a little bit to music, worship. I know that you've toured a little bit with James Wilson, a friend of yours, and
yes,
certainly well known in our fellowship. But we'll come back to that in a minute. I do want to touch on what you already mentioned. You have a powerful testimony. Now, when you were here a few years ago, you shared it with our church, but I just wanted to recapture that and revisit it even for myself. You're adopted.
Yeah.
But I guess kind of tell us how. I'll just let you share the testimony. I don't want to say too much. Why don't you share that with us?
So, I was gonna say a few years ago, but I'm getting older now. I am 30.
It happens to the best of us. I hear.
I am 32. For those of you that are curious, I know I might look 21.
Of course.
So anybody that's saying anything other than that, then we'll talk after. But years ago, I remember talking with our associate pastor now, Pastor Kelvin Shaw, and it's after a service, and I remember I was going to him and I was discussing with him just what God's plan was for my life, and just coming to the realization that I was serving God through my parents, and you can't do that. You've got to have a personal relationship with God, one that's personal to you. Mm-hmm. And so I had asked him that question. And his response was, to me at the time, you don't have a right not to serve God. And I remember thinking at that moment, wow, those words are so deep. Thank you for giving me words that I can return and continue on with life and serving God. But a bit of sarcasm there, if you can't tell. But I went home that night, and those words stuck with me, and prayed as I do, and I went to bed, and I dreamt that night that I dreamt this dream where a child was born and then immediately thrown into a garbage can outside of the hospital in Montego Bay, Jamaica. And when that happened, I remember thinking, like, why am I watching this? I saw a police officer come and pick up the child after hours of being outside, bringing the child back inside the hospital. And then at that point, they plugged a bunch of equipment up to him, and the dream kind of faded out there, but it came back in like a different story type of way. And I saw the next scene where the baby was at an orphanage, and I was watching as parents or people looking for a child to adopt came. And I remember seeing that same child that was in the garbage can, that was in the hospital, that same child standing on the side of his crib crying, and looking for someone to at least pick him up and hold him. And it wasn't until I had seen the people that I call my mom and dad today, Yvonne and Don Hatfield. It wasn't until I saw them walking up the driveway of that orphanage in Blossom Gardens, Jamaica. It wasn't until I saw that when I realized who the dream was about. And at that moment, I woke up from the dream crying. I went upstairs to my parents' bedroom, and I woke my mom up. It was about 2 a.m, and I proceeded to tell her about this dream. See, the thing is, I had known that I was adopted. From as long as I can remember, I remember knowing that these parents are not the ones that gave birth to me.
Yeah.
But I didn't know the circumstances that led to my adoption. And so when that happened, and I told my mom, halfway through the story, my mom started to cry, and my dad woke up, and I continued telling him the story, and they both were crying. And I remember thinking, as I'm talking to them, I'm thinking, why are they crying? Like I get why I was crying, but why are they crying at this moment? And my mom proceeded to tell me that that's your story.
Wow. That's
you. That is actually your story.
How old were you when this happened? Did you you may have said, no, when you had the dream.
When I had the dream, I was, I'm going to say 21.
Oh, so this is later in life.
Yeah.
You're not a young child.
No.
Wow.
This is later in life. I'm already leading worship. I'm doing things in the church. But up until that point, I was just doing things because that's what I was accustomed to.
Yeah.
That's what I was growing up to do. I grew up hearing my mom praying at 10 o'clock at night or at 6 a.m. over you while you're trying to sleep. I grew up with that. And so it was just me living or serving God because of my surroundings. But like I said, there came that moment when I had to make a decision. And after I told my parents that and they said, that's your dream, I went back downstairs. I went back to bed and I dreamt that same dream from start to finish. And this time I saw not the police officer that found me in the garbage can, but I saw the hand of Jesus picking me up out of the garbage can. I saw Jesus standing there beside me in the hospital room. I saw Jesus leading, like literally taking the hands of Yvonne and Don Hatfield, my parents. I saw him leading them up that driveway into that orphanage. And I saw him go past every other crib right to my crib. And I watched as they picked me up and they said, this is the one. And it was at that moment in the dream when the words from my youth pastor came back to me and said, you don't have a right not to serve God. And when you think about it and you put all of the things that came together to put that story into perspective, I don't have a right. God gave me the choice.
Sure.
But I don't have a right. Because if it hadn't been for Jesus, who was walking by my side, even, I'd say this all the time, even there's a song, Waymaker, even when I can't see it, he's working. Even when I don't feel it, he's working. Even as a child who had no clue who this man Jesus was, he knew who I was.
Amazing.
And he stopped everything to come down and make sure that what hell meant for evil, God will turn around for my good. So at that point in my life, I made the decision that, you know what, this is only because of God. The reason I'm here today, the reason I'm talking to you, bro, is only because of God. And because of that, because my life could have been taken years ago, from the moment I was born, because of that, I can say that, I'm sold out to this.
Yeah.
Whatever. What do you need me to do? I'll serve. Do you need me to pull the garbage bags out to the side of the road, which I hate doing, but hopefully pastor doesn't watch this. But if that's what's needed for me to do, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because it's serving the kingdom.
And the reality is, God gave you a front row seat for your story.
Exactly.
But the reality is he's done that for all of us.
Absolutely.
Not to diminish the impact of this testimony you've just shared, but really none of us have a right to not serve God because he's walked with us and been along our journey as well.
Exactly.
So, man, that is so
if
powerful.
You think about the amount of things that happen in life, the amount of times, just look at people in general, the amount of times that things go wrong, and the amount of times that, like, every day you leave your house and you just go about your day. But the reality is God has kept you. If you're standing here today, it's because God kept you.
Absolutely.
You don't have to have I was healed from cancer. I was delivered from maybe you don't have that story. But the reality is that God came and he died for you. And he's kept you ever since.
So good.
So,
I just want to ask this question, and maybe it seems like a left turn from where we just were, but growing up in an adopted home, was that ever something that, as a younger man or a younger child, that you wrestled with? And if so, because I don't know who may listen to this someday. Maybe somebody is kind of from a similar story as yours, and maybe that's something they wrestle with. Was it something that you had to overcome in your mind at times, or was it not that for you? Maybe that's a loaded question.
No, you're good, bro. If I'm honest, I believe that my parents did the absolute best job. Of my parents, my sisters, my aunties, my uncles, my grandparents, they did the best job that they could. integrating me into the family. I have never felt like I was not a part of the family.
That's cool.
There's some things, and I was adopted at a young age, so there's some things that I do today that I'm like, where did I get that from? And it's from my dad, or it's from my mom. So I'd have to say that I feel like I was sheltered from that, from that aspect of it. However, I have had moments where I've longed to find my birth mother. Not to let me be real. Not to have to get to know her, but because I was angry. But I had to work through that, and my wife has helped me through that. These are things I've obviously started dealing with the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And so my wife has helped me through that. Just remaining in church, taking the time to actually recognize when I need to step back and give some focus on my own personal health and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that has helped me, but I'd say I've been pretty sheltered from that, if I'm honest.
Yeah. No. I don't know. It just kind of came to me. Probably in some ways now, as you're 32 years old, you would perhaps have more means to pursue that.
Yeah.
And to track that down as opposed to being a young man or a teenager and living at home with your parents. But
I've tried.
Have you?
I have tried. I've paid money to try and get some information. But it was always difficult.
Yeah.
And I've just learned that God will open doors when it's time to have those doors open.
If that is something that is to happen, then
it'll happen.
It'll happen.
It'll happen. So I don't need to. If it happens down the road, then we'll walk through that door. But I'm not gonna kick a door down just to see something that maybe I'm not mentally prepared to or emotionally mature enough to handle. So I've learned that, and I'm okay with that. Yeah,
very, very well said. And I appreciate you sharing on that briefly.
Absolutely.
So let's shift back to worship for a few minutes. You've talked about you started on the drums. I started on the drums. I love being on the drums. I don't do it as much as I would like. Yeah, get some maybe some pent up like energy or like if you got some aggression, you can let it out on the
muscle cramps for me. That's really what happens after my leg will cramp up. And
yes. So this is a side note. Maybe I'll throw this into the podcast. I received a video actually from your pastor last week, and now that makes more sense. Knowing that you started on the drums, you know what you like to hear from the drums.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I may throw this in the video, but all I know is that
you need to. Yeah.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
Bring it down. Tom, 4, 6. Can you hear me? David, can you hear me? Okay, turn me up then. I want you to hit the toms. Hit the toms. You need to turn me up in your headphones so I can hear me. You can hear me talk. You gonna hit the toms? Okay. We're gonna cut when they go to parts. Hit the toms in the name of Jesus. Here we go. Toms. Thank you.
It was hit the toms in Jesus' name. That's the line that stood out to me through the talkback system. Anyway, so you've had the opportunity. You told me today, and you reminded me that being here 4 years ago was really one of the first times that you branched out beyond leading worship in your local church, and you came and you led worship here. Since then, you've had the opportunity to, I think you said you've been on tour with Charity Gale.
I went and ministered at her church.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I didn't go on tour yet, no.
But you were on tour with James Wilson.
Yes.
So tell us about some of those opportunities and experiences and what you've learned from them and I guess how those came to be and unfolded and just kind of talk a little bit about it, share about it.
Let me start off by saying this. It goes back to the doors being opened conversation that I had said, I had the opportunity to be on tour with James for like at the start of the pandemic in 2020. And and then with Draylon, supposed to be with him as well.
Yes.
But Canada's rules on travel, I'll leave it at that, caused me.
Do you have any political statements you would? Oh, I'm just kidding.
Well, since I live in Ottawa, you can. It's
enough said.
It's enough said. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Carry on.
So, but Canada's stance on it made it very difficult for me to leave the country and come back, and I still had obligations at my local church.
Of course. Yeah.
And I am a firm believer that no matter what happens in your life, your local church you need to remain that needs to be your foundation.
Yep.
You need to be focused on the local church. District stuff, yeah, that's great. The tour, it's amazing. But local stuff needs to take precedence. Mm-hmm. So what was going to happen is if I went on the tour with Draylon or James, it would have caused me to miss like 3 weeks of church at home, which isn't fair and which I wasn't prepared to do. So, and financially, absolutely crazy with the PCR tests.
Oh yeah.
So, I remember being annoyed and distraught and just, yeah, it was rough thinking about how all these doors that are opening that I can't actually walk through. But I made up my mind that when it's time, if it's time, that door will open. And again, it'll be a smooth process. And it did with James Wilson. The door opened up and I said, God, I'm gonna try to walk through this door. If it shuts, then it shuts. But everything flowed. So it was when James sent me all the vocal tracks and all that stuff. It was a daunting process to hear just exactly what was required of the tenors for every single one of his songs. The shocking part to me was that we were doing every single one of his songs in one setting. Obviously, it was the songs for the Nation tour.
Yes.
Was the one that I was on.
This was not the recording. This was the following tour.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was really cool to see that process happen. I think what shocked me the most is the level of excellence that James has with anything that he touches. So I remember we landed in Bossier City, Louisiana, which is Pastor Ryan Dean's church.
Yep.
Love that guy. One of my favorite preachers out there, or just guys to hang out with and talk to. Yep. But it was at his church, and I arrived on Thursday night. Friday morning, we went to the church for rehearsal. We rehearsed through the entire set. And then we went and got lunch. And then we came back and rehearsed through the entire set again, which shocked me. The first time I thought I was good. I wasn't. So there was a lot of things that I had to fix within my part. But it was like we had done the service 3 times over on that Friday before the actual tour night started. So that was 4 times of singing the entire set through.
Wow.
Which shocked me, was a shock for me, but also showed me areas within my own local district when I'm preparing for conventions or when I'm preparing to be here, for example, the level of excellence that needs to go into making sure that you can effectively minister.
Yeah.
Because the reality is we got to that night of that Friday night of the tour, and we went through the entire set, and I was confident with every song.
Yeah.
But it also allowed for there to be worship flow because we weren't looking to each other for the next, like we knew what was next. And we were so in sync that when the Spirit of the Lord just wanted to maybe stay in an area for a second, we were we were right on top of it.
That's interesting because sometimes I think we have this idea that excess preparation or excellence, it's almost like, well, we're going to crowd out God and we're going to push God to the background because we're putting so much focus on our abilities or our, in your case, vocals and parts and whatever. But the reality is it's the opposite. We actually make room for God when we focus on excellence.
Yeah.
And I can think of that applying in, so many areas of life generally, but certainly in the kingdom, whether it's, finessing a sermon or, I guess almost arduously, painstakingly going over song lyrics until you get it just right or rehearsing parts. Ultimately, what you're doing, you're not trying to crowd God out. You're actually making room for God to step in.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it gets you out of the way.
And you're magnifying especially if you're working on a part, for example, if you're working on a part, God gave you the gift to sing.
Yeah.
He gave you that gift. So you're perfecting it. You're perfecting it so that when you do minister, you're showing the best version of what God gave you.
So good. Yeah, that's amazing. So any interesting or funny stories or anything from your time touring or just generally, maybe there's something that's happened over the years that you feel like you should share. We'll just have a little comic relief right here in the middle.
I'll say, I would say for the first stop, I was definitely unprepared.
Yeah.
So it was, brother, I don't know if you guys might know Brother Easter, his daughter,
yes.
Bethany Easter.
Yeah, I know of her.
Okay, so she's one of the vocalists, and she actually is probably like the lead for all of his parts and stuff like that. She's just as particular as James Wilson is. So there's a couple of times where one of the songs, I got a song at the end of one of the portions. It goes woo. From the longest time I was saying oh, and so I went to the service and I said oh, and
she said oh no.
Immediately, like halfway through the syllable, she turned and was like no, and it wasn't a like correction, just like, hey Ricardo, just work on that. No, it was stop the music, we're gonna start it from the top. It's woo. So at that point I was like, oh, so and it was like, Ricardo, you're saying it wrong. So it was humbling, number one, but also taught me the importance of learning the material and actually studying and whatnot, and making sure.
Yet another emphasis on excellence.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
And it sounds great when the whole team is in unison.
Yeah.
And on the same page. Comic relief. I don't know, bro.
Some people say there's nothing wilder or funnier than a Pentecostal service sometimes. So,
yes.
We've all. Not all of us, but we have grown up in Pentecost. There's got to be something.
I was, without naming names, I was recently in a worship service. I won't tell you where, but it turns out that a gentleman got a pretty serious concussion in our worship service. And I was shocked to find that out, that he spent the whole service throwing up. But listen, anybody that grew up Pentecostal knows that it is a safe place to be in the house of the Lord. But it can also be a dangerous place to be. When
we sing lyrics like anything can happen, we mean that in more ways than one.
Literally. When you walk into the room.
Or when you run into the wall, you might get a concussion. I don't know how that happened, but that's amazing.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure the security cameras picked it up. I will try and find that footage. Just obviously for my own personal use.
Yeah.
I won't share it on Church of Laugh or Church Milk. Definitely not.
Yeah.
So if it is there, you know it wasn't from me.
It wasn't from you. You heard it here.
Yeah.
It's not coming from Ricardo.
It's not coming from me.
That is amazing. Yeah. I do want to just, we've talked about touring with James, and you just made me aware before we started recording that at your local church, you guys are investing time and money into setting up a recording studio, which I love it when I hear of apostolic artists, releasing music or content or whatever. So I was very excited to hear that. Tell us a little bit about that, and I guess what your vision is to expand what you do in worship and where you headed.
Okay. Well, what the great thing is that my pastor came up with this all on his own. He absolutely loves and supports our worship team at our church, every department really, but obviously because I'm the worship leader at the church, I see that side of him more. But so we recently moved into our new building, probably about 5 years now.
Yep.
So I guess it's not that recent, but
it's relatively recent. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And our old building, our youth center, we're currently renovating that. It was high ceiling, so we're putting a second floor in there with more classrooms upstairs, more offices upstairs, and then we're dividing the sanctuary. One side will be our youth sanctuary. The other side will be divided into a vocal booth, a live room with live instruments that you can record.
Cool.
And then a couple of offices. But the great thing about that is that we'll have the ability, once it's all said and done, we'll have the ability to, what our church does, we have, we call it I Grow devotions, and I worship sessions. So we have that during the week. So on Tuesday, Monday, there's nothing. On Tuesday, there's I Grow devotion. So somebody, kind of like what we're doing here, we'll do a devotion that'll air at 10 o'clock on our private Facebook page. And that's shot really amateur by myself in a room that has a fan going sometimes. And sometimes you hear it loudly through the... Anyways. So we have that aspect of it. And then on Thursdays... is the I worship session. And so someone from a member of our worship team will be singing, typically play, and we'll put that out for our church on Thursday morning. And then Friday is devotion again. So we wanted to create a space where that could be more professionally done and potentially share it on our main page for anybody that follows our church. They can tune in and hear some words throughout the week and some worship sessions. But the other aspect of it is that I myself am working on music. And I know a lot of my friends work on music. Eleni Young from Alberta, Lloydminster. I'll be with her in a few weeks.
Yep.
She's recording music. So there's a lot of apostolic artists and artists outside of our fellowship that especially in the city of Ottawa, that would take advantage of having a place to record music. And so we've noticed in the past and currently that there's not a lot of places to do that in the city.
Yeah.
So having that available to our apostolic artists, myself included, and then having that available to people in our city of like faith or singing Christian music would be beneficial for the body of Christ and also for our church.
Yeah. So you are writing music.
Yeah.
And so what are the next steps there? Will you be recording those, releasing those? I
will be recording. It's hard. I was hoping to have stuff out already.
I mean, if you want to just sing it right now, I mean, this will be released. It can kind of be like the preliminary, the first steps.
Okay. Let me.
Hey,
my mic went dead. Sorry.
Oh man, how many songs are you working on?
I have 3 that are written. I just sent one off to James Wilson to get just to get his feedback on it.
Yep.
I feel like this one, the one that I just sent, is one for that God wants me to release as soon as possible.
Wow.
So we're fine tuning the lyrics. I really appreciate the time that he took to give me proper feedback, constructive criticism, and so we're working on honing in some of those lyrics that maybe didn't make sense. I'm not a lyricist. I
Understood.
So
is there a title for the song?
Better for Me.
Better for Me.
Yeah.
Okay, can I say you heard it here first?
You heard it here first.
Better for Me.
You heard it. It's a song about seeing God's point of view and knowing that God ultimately has better for you. The first lyrics are, I wish I could see from your point of view, then I'd know for sure your promise is true. But here in the valley with no end in sight, but with heaven's perspective, I know that faith will arise.
Amazing.
So the pre-chorus is, I believe you have more, and that's all I'm going to give you.
All right, yeah.
But yeah, so I'm super excited about it. And so, yeah, that's what we're working on right now.
Well, I think that would be cool. I'm looking forward to hearing that. And I mean, really, we're seeing more and more representation of apostolic artists, certainly in the United States. And, I love to see a Canadian brother doing the same thing. So I think that's wonderful. We're going to wind it up here. Let me just say, I'll give you the opportunity to answer this. And because I would say your focus is and has been worship leading, now writing music, and that's been kind of progressing for you. If you had advice or input for a younger worship leader, somebody on a worship team that maybe has a passion to do more, would you have any advice for them? Beyond anything you've already said, of course, but what would you say to somebody that feels like they're gifted in that area? What would be your best advice to them?
I would say, study your gifting. What does that mean? There's areas, there's YouTube videos, there's stuff that you can watch or listen to help grow your abilities. But so I'm going to bounce all over the place here
That's all right.
for a second. Study, make sure that you are equipped to do what you feel God is calling you to do.
Almost like the excellence comment from earlier, honing your craft.
Absolutely. There is something that, like, I'm learning something new all the time. I watched Mark Crowder. He did a live video just a few days ago. And there was something that he mentioned in that. It was vertical worship and I can't remember the other. Some of the listeners, they might be able to grab hold of it. But I wrote it down. That's something I said I didn't realize, I didn't know. But there's two different areas of worship. There's vertical worship and there's this other type of worship.
Yeah.
But you've got to make sure that you have a balance of it. So I'm currently learning that. That'll help me. I know that'll help me in designing a worship service or leading a worship service and putting a worship set together to make sure that all my songs. So he gives an example of talking about healing. You've got to make sure that all your songs aren't just about healing, and like there are areas that you will need healing for, but we've got to give God some praise and for the things that he's already done and for who he is in general. If he doesn't do one of James Wilson's songs, I don't know if it's released yet.
If you haven't done anything.
There we go.
Yeah, that's released. You're good. You're good.
God. I was about to get sued here.
You heard it here first.
But his song, if you never do anything else, you've already done enough.
Yeah.
We got to make sure that is in our worship services as well, because it's a part of the worship, the praise and worship service is letting God know that regardless of if I don't get a healing, regardless of if you don't do this or that, you're still God. And so there was that area of vertical and I can't remember the other word, but that type of worship. So I said that to say I've been leading worship for years and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. There's stuff that I can still learn. There's stuff that I can grow from. But I would say if you're starting out, be open to learn. Mm-hmm. Always be open to learn. Always be open to serving. It's not about platform ministry. That is just you showing what you've done privately.
Yeah. And true worship really is not an action per se. True worship is lifestyle.
Exactly.
So really, you're serving in some other capacity. That's still a type of worship to God.
Absolutely.
And can be an example to somebody else.
Absolutely. Anytime that I'm leading worship for any event like this one, I've actually gone through the service in my own private time. Mm-hmm. So I've sat at the piano, if you know how to play piano, drums, bass. I've sat at whatever I'm doing, and I've gone through it, and I've had my moment with God. I've had my private time with God.
Yeah.
I think that is let me take that back. I know that is crucial to whatever you're doing in a worship service. Even the preacher, he's preparing and studying what he's going to preach on, what God gave him. And so I think it's crucial that as worship leaders, as background vocalists, as drummers, as piano players, bass players, guitar players, saxophone players, you're having your private time with God. That comes first and foremost. Don't ask or don't desire to lead on a platform if you haven't led yourself through worship privately.
Good. And I mean, it sounds like, just in a general sense, the couple of things you've already said, yes, you may be gifted, but don't rest on your laurels and just say, well, I have a gift and I can do this. Be willing to continue to grow in it, grow spiritually, grow in ability, and don't be satisfied to just stay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And train up. I love recently I've adopted this mentality of training other people, because what shows that you're maturing is that you're training other people, in my mind.
Yeah.
If there's somebody that I see that has potential, I want to work with them so that they can be a better worship leader than I've ever been.
Yeah.
So that they can lead with excellence better than I. You just want to leave area for other people to also minister. Mm-hmm. It's just because I'm a worship leader in Ontario. For instance, I have other people that lead other songs within the convention. Yeah. And this past convention, I led most of the songs, which I prefer not to do. Obviously, vocally, it is tiring, but it also allows for other people to grow. Yeah. And that's what you want. Yeah. You want to make sure that everybody that you're coming to contact with, whether they're on platform ministry or whether they're responding to the word, that they're growing.
Whether you're a pastor, a preacher, a worship leader, whatever capacity in volunteering or serving at a church, all of it is temporary. Yeah. We're all interim, fill in the blank, interim worship leaders, interim pastors. So, it's important that, I've heard the phrase, you're almost trying to work yourself out of a job.
Absolutely.
You're trying to invest in somebody else that could someday take it on and like you said, do better. You're hoping that they'll do better than you. Yeah. And when you don't do that, that's really a sign of an insecure leader, somebody that doesn't want somebody else to outshine them. Yeah. So I think that's wonderful. Great advice. And I mean, I think we've kind of touched all the important subjects on our conversation today. Anything else you want to leave with the listeners?
No, I was going to say no, I would, but yes.
No, but yes.
I would just say if you're a worship leader, or if you do any type of involvement with your music ministry at your local church, be the best that you can be at your local church. Yeah. Learn your material, respond to planning center requests. Oh, praise God.
I hear that. I feel a witness.
If my team is listening, I know God is speaking to you right now. Respond to planning center requests. Just put a spirit of excellence in what you're doing locally, and it'll make room for you globally.
And I know I said we're winding up, but I do just want to hit on this. You were talking earlier just in conversation that there was an opportunity to move beyond where you are locally right now, but you had made a decision to say, I'm planted here.
Yeah.
I'm invested here.
Yeah.
The local church, this is where I am. And after that, God opened a door of blessing in your life.
Absolutely.
And it was a direct result, or certainly directly after, at the very least, of you saying, my local church
comes first.
Yeah, I don't have destination disease. I'm not looking to leave. I'm not looking to do something different. This is where I am. And God uses and honors people like that.
Absolutely.
Your life is certainly a testimony of that.
Absolutely. Last but not least, I feel like I have the best pastor, best pastoral team. I know every church feels that. I know CCC has the best pastoral team in Fredericton. Just Fredericton though. I'm kidding. No, it's an honor and a privilege to serve at my local church, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed to do it.
The Ricardos, great family, and they've allowed you to be here, and we're grateful for that too.
Sir.
So, well, thank you for the time, Ricardo. It's been fun, and thank you to everybody that's tuning in. And if you've listened to this, we thank you for that. And be sure to share it with a friend if you feel it would be a blessing to them. Hope you have a great day. God bless you, man. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody for listening today.
Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in to The Conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review this podcast, share this episode with a friend, and subscribe for future content. This podcast is produced by Capital Community Church in Fredericton, New Brunswick. If you're in the area, we would love to have you for one of our weekly services. For service times and more information, please check out capitalcommunity.ca. We look forward to seeing you again next month on The Conversation.